I mean, if my mother got there and sweated from morning until night, and you tell me I don't own anything she sweated on, I mean, how can that be? From when I saw my mother and father and my brothers do while I was growing up, I feel that I don't want any of my kids to come in a world like this, because I know some days I saw my mother slaving from 6 in the morning in hot sun, 100-degree weather, from pulling a hoe in a field from 6 until night, with about an hour's break between us all this time. And my father doing labor that machines wouldn't even be made to do hardly. Doing labor that bad. And I feel that if we've been working this long and can't even own the shirts on our back, I feel that we have to take some drastic steps to make something happen, to make a change come about, because Mississippi is going to either have to change or there can be no more Mississippi. And we have to do this in any means as possible. Through our parents, we've earned Mississippi. There's no question about it, brother. I mean...
Thank you and welcome to my channel, Simply Your World, where we discuss past and present events that will affect you if they haven't already. Tonight, we will be listening to real testimonies of servitude and despair, and the contrasting opinions of slave versus master. In this look back in time, you will see every story is told from a place of experience with all emotions intact. Please stay tuned for a very rare look into not only Black history, but American history.
American cities have come to think of as racial turmoil has occurred in Charleston. But underneath the graciousness, old relationships are often found intact. Descendants of slaves work for descendants of slave owners. Mrs. Lionel Legg retains the tone of a past she cherishes.
So Daisy was my little playmate, my maid, my friend, and the daughter of old Catherine, who was a cook that we adored. And so all those years, we played together, and everyone was happy. We never heard of all these things that we hear about today. And there were nearly 100 enormous rice plantation with many animals around and a beautiful old house and about 100 colored people there. But we loved them. They were our friends. And then it's no disgrace to say they're like children. When we say that, it's because they are like happy children, some of them. Because they like to sit in the sun and rather than work hard. And they'd rather play than work.
The Southern white man just loves to say that, oh, our Negroes are happy. They like it. They like the way things are. If other people would just leave them alone, there wouldn't be any problem. And some, I think, really believed it. And I think that that's one thing perhaps that sort of thrown them off balance when all of a sudden their Negroes just weren't behaving the way they thought they ought to behave. You were just a doormat. And that's where the good relations came in. As long as you're a doormat, we have wonderful relations.
My father had everything thoroughbred, from the pigs, the horses, the dogs, and the people had to be thoroughbred. And we would get into a buggy with him and drive to the plantation from what we call the Pine Land where we lived. And we would spend, every Saturday this was, and we would spend a day in old Fortune, I can see him now, would give us dinner, and we would have a heavenly time. And old April, he was the dairyman. That's all he did. All he did was to skim the cream over these great big bowls of clabber and put them in the wooden churn and churn this marvelous fresh butter. That was April's job. He didn't do anything else but love us and skim the cream.
They just felt that until recently, relations between the Negroes and white were just so very good. Just wonderful relations. It's outside agitators. And yet, it never occurs to them that they were good on whose terms? On their terms.
Those terms have been dictated by a white aristocracy that has ruled the South for almost 300 years. What he thinks must be done in Charleston is what Bill Saunders, a black activist, worries about. He finds the past too close for comfort. Although it is more than 100 years since the end of legal slavery in America, Saunders believes too many whites act like masters and too many blacks feel like slaves.
Old slave master and slave condition that existed 100, 200 years ago is still here in Charleston. We, as black people, were brought into this country for slave labor. And we have worked as slaves from the time that we were brought into this country until the present time. I'm fighting so hard for black survival because I believe that this country is getting to the place that they don't need that labor anymore. And since they don't need that labor anymore, they don't need black people anymore. The past has taught me that I got to do something to survive here. And this, I feel like, a lot of us going to have to start exactly how we feel about this situation. We really got nothing to lose, really. We ain't got no jobs to lose. We ain't got no business to lose. The only thing that we have got to lose is our lives, and man been taking that anytime he wanted. The thing that I am saying, or that I am preaching, that instead of going to jail for the man all the time for nothing, if you're going to go to jail, go to jail for something. Have yourself a plan and make something count when you do go to jail. This is the type of program, but you got to, the thing that we don't have no program to go to the man and say, this is what we want. But there's a lot of things in my past that I'm guilty of. First, my parents were black, and then I was born black. You're not guilty, of no crime at all except for being black. The white man is my oppressor. He's the one that controls the jail, he controls the hospital, he controls the army, he controls the Navy, he controls everything. And he's the man that I have to fight. White America's got to wake up and realize and listen and understand that not only black folk got to make sacrifices, but white folks going to have to start making sacrifices. Some sacrifices to make this country what it's supposed to be. Other than that, there's not going to be no country.
These testimonies are from the 1950s, early to late 50s. And it's funny how things haven't really changed. To me, this is a really good testimony, an example of not knowing your history, you're doomed to repeat it. And, some people say that all this is in the past, it shouldn't affect the thinking of today. But imagine an elaborate domino scheme, right? And you tip the first domino, and they all begin to fall. When the last one falls, how can anyone say the first one had no effect on the last one, whether directly or indirectly?
Every man, woman, and child in Mississippi can rationalize how they have always been friends to the colored man. All of a sudden they wake up here one morning and are told that what the way they've operated for the last 100 years is wrong. This is a hard thing to just tell a man that he spent his life doing something wrong. He doesn't have to believe it. And then all of a sudden, we're some kind of demon. If you live in Mississippi and run a cotton plantation, you're supposed to be some kind of demon. This is the national image of a cotton plantation operator in the Mississippi Delta.
Humphreys McGee owns a 2,500-acre plantation in the Mississippi Delta. His mother's family has been in the state for 7 generations. And on his father's side, the McGees moved to the Delta from South Carolina. Charleston was the elegant capital of Southern culture in the 19th century. Mississippi was the frontier. Attitudes hardened early. The old way of life has endured in Mississippi longer than anywhere else. Whites and blacks in the Delta look at the past from different angles, but it is a shared past.
See, the Civil War's over, and regardless of the evils of slavery, these people understood each other. It was not some sort of medieval torture for a person to be a tenant farmer on a plantation. And I don't know anybody that's ashamed of the system, the way it worked. It's an impossible system to return to. With that mechanical cotton picker, one man could do what 150 men had been doing. This was the crowning blow to this system. Everything's geared to machinery. Where I used to have 83 families on the plantation, I have 15 boys working machine operators. But I will say that the system we had was a system that, on the surface, developed a very outgoing, happy group of people. They're old people now, but these are the people that I grew up thinking I knew.
Obviously, both parties were born into their situations. The Caucasian man born into money, born into the ability to dictate, you know what I mean? And then you have the black people, as of today, born into situations of servitude, of only looking for jobs and, you know, trying to find a way just to find some money to take care of their families. It's either that, the military, prison, or death or the streets, you know what I mean? So, playing devil's advocate, what if the black man and the black woman, black men and the white man in that last clip were truly friends, right? But due to the fact that the powers that be won't allow them to share wealth or to share to make a way for themselves like they see the person they're working for doing, that's why the Bible says, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness and of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places." It is the high places making the decisions and controlling everyone like a puppet, you know, controlling thoughts and controlling actions to get a desired outcome.
In the South, he knows who the man is, the man up there on the hill in the big White House. And when he comes to a city like Chicago, it's much harder to determine who that man is. It's such a complex society. It's a different man who controls the house from the man who controls the job, from the man who controls the welfare, from the man who controls the hospital, from the man who controls the school. And I think what's happening is that he comes rather quickly to the conclusion that the man is all the white men. Not being able to discern his specific captor, he decides that all people with white faces are his captors. And to the degree that all white people are engaged in supporting the systems of separation and racist institutions that we have in the North, that judgment is basically accurate.
In the frontier days, slaves begged not to be sent to Mississippi, where their work was almost as harsh as the overseers. Resistance was often subtle, but seldom absent. A runaway slave said that each so-called happy song was a testimony against slavery and a prayer for deliverance.
Nothing happens for no reason, right? At least that's what they say. Could this be the reason why they monitor all of our music, all of our movies, all of our actions, trying to pick up every nugget they can? They got their paper clips, their tape, their staplers, trying to piece things together, you know, to figure out the code. Because every song, every happy song was a prayer for deliverance. You know, I don't think they want deliverance.
We're going to have to put some kind of a stop down on that corner. This system, in its best sense, was based on noblesse oblige by the landowner. But I don't have 83 families anymore that I feel like I'm the daddy of. I do not expect to ever have this relationship with the younger generation, the children of these men. They are oriented entirely differently. They grew up in the 50s. They're conscious of the changing the status quo. They are fairly confused about what their position is. They don't want to be subservient. The white man does not want to give over his institutions, and that's what people fear that would happen. You just don't want to turn over the reins of everything and give up control. Who wants to give up control?
Okay, guys, get in the car. Let's go.
So white supremacy is undoubtedly a feeling that white people have all over the world. Of course, how the black man and the white man would live together has been the paramount concern of people ever since the Mississippi Valley was settled, especially when the greatest number were the black people. The problem is I don't need the men I used to need.
Humphreys McGee can run his plantation with machines now, and the government takes care of surplus cotton. That leaves surplus people, and no one does anything about them. They cluster into shanty towns like this one in Cleveland, Mississippi, and they wait for something, almost anything, to happen. First as slaves, and then as tenants and sharecroppers, black Mississippians turned the Delta swamps into the richest plantation soil in the world. Now the soil and the crops no longer need the people. The mechanical cotton picker, an instrument of agricultural efficiency, became also an instrument of history. In many Mississippi counties, blacks have always been in the majority, which means whites have had a problem. If you've got the land and the money, but not the numbers, it's natural, as Humphreys McGee says, to want control. In Mississippi, white control has made the past hard to distinguish from the present. More than anyone else, the spirit of resistance to this control has been Fannie Lou Hamer. At the 1964 Democratic Convention, Mrs. Hamer was a leader of the attempt to unseat the regular Democratic delegation from Mississippi.
Mississippi is still a very rough place. People is not just walking up like they used to do in the past, walking out, shooting a man down or getting maybe 200 or 300 people carrying you out and lynching you, but it's in a most settled way. They can let you starve to death, not give you jobs. These are some of the things that's happening right now in Mississippi. See, Mississippi is not actually Mississippi's problem. Mississippi is America's problem. Because if America wanted to do something about what has been going on in Mississippi, it could have stopped by now. It wouldn't have been in the past few years between 40 and 50 churches bombed and burned. You see, and this lead me to say, all of the burning and bombing that was done to us and the houses, nobody never said too much about that, and nothing was done. But let something be burned, by a black man, and then, my God, you see, the flag is drenched with our blood. Because, you see, so many of our ancestors was killed because we have never accepted slavery. We had to live on it, but we've never wanted it. So we know that this flag is drenched with our blood. So what the young people are saying now, give us a chance to be young men, respected as a man, as we know this country was built on the black backs of black people across this country. And if we don't have it, you ain't gonna have it either, because we gonna tear it up. That's what they saying. And people ought to understand that. I don't see why they don't understand that. They know what they've done to us. All across this country, they know what they've done to us. This country is desperately sick, and man is on the critical list. I really don't know where we go from here.